Welcome to an NFL Week 13 edition of the RotoWire Sports Betting Pod. Myself, Nick Whalen, joined, as always, by my close compadre, John McKechnie. John, we have an abbreviated slate to break down this week. 6 teams on bye. Thankfully, we are done with this bye nonsense after Week 13, but no Bills, no Bears, no Raiders, no Vikings, no Giants, and no Baltimore Ravens, your favorite team. So we could view the board objectively, and I hate when a bunch of other teams are on bye. Like, I feel like we're being shortchanged when we only have 13 games instead of 15 or 16. But when your team is rolling like the Ravens are, it's kind of nice to be able to sit back and just, chill out, watch these games objectively, and not have the stress of watching your favorite team sometimes.
No, exactly. And Sunday night was a little bit too close for comfort. The classic Ravens just not being able to put teams away. The Chargers started to look like they just weren't gonna stop scoring in the fourth quarter, even though the scoreboard, I suppose, suggests otherwise. And it looked like the Ravens were going to
stop putting up points. Those Chargers,
and it looked like the Ravens were going to go 3 and out every single time.
Yeah.
The defense made some plays. So now I can direct all of my stress to the Georgia Bulldogs. They get set to face the Alabama Crimson Tide here in Atlanta. I'm nervous about that one, but that's outside the broader scope of the show. Clearly, you're not enough of a best ball sicko to remember that the Cardinals and the Commanders are on bye next week, though.
Oh, really? Are they? Okay. Well,
yeah.
This whole time I've been thinking we were done with bye weeks. Oh my God. All right. Well, I should have known those two teams of all teams would be pulling off the Week 14 bye. But all right, I stand corrected on that. I sound like an idiot to begin the show. No. I want to ask you real quickly. Did you consider going to the SEC title game? I mean, this is now 3 years in a row that Georgia's basically been in this same position. Are you more nervous, less nervous? Like, having the chance to three-peat, which no team has done in forever. Like, does this feel like there's almost more pressure on this one than last year? Like, I'm interested to get in on your psyche as a fan here, because you're in a very unique position, and one that, as a Wisconsin Badger, I probably will never, ever be close to.
It lands in the middle. Like last year, I felt very confident about beating LSU. The first year, it was such a magical season, and then I was very nervous about Bryce Young in Alabama at the time. And I mean, Alabama just smoked Georgia. The defense looked slow, sluggish, out of sorts, and that was awful. I thought that Georgia was at risk of missing the playoff. That's my big concern is does Georgia miss the playoff if they lose? And I think Oregon's going to make a loud enough statement on Friday night. Texas is favored by 15 points. They have the win straight up over Alabama, so that's going to help probably keep them ahead of the Tide potentially. Washington, again, by extension of Oregon, winning on Friday, my expectation that would knock them out. But I think that the crux of the matter is how the committee treats Florida State, because they are not the same team without Jordan Travis. But can you really leave an undefeated Florida State team out of the playoff? That's going to be tricky for the committee to sort out. And does Georgia, or has their season been good enough to where does the committee forgive them for the one loss and just drop them to like third or fourth in the seeding? So as long as they still get into the playoff, I don't really care, but I am very scared of Jalen Milroe. That dude is a hell of an athlete, and he 4th and 31 last week, season on the line, just delivers a dagger against Auburn. Unreal.
That was awesome. That was so much fun to watch. I mean, these last 2 weeks, last week and this coming week, are like 2 of my favorite weeks of the entire sports calendar, specifically for all the college football we have coming at us. We got some great college basketball. We got pre-in-season tournament weekend in the NBA.
Yeah.
But let's focus our attention here, John, on the NFL, and we'll talk quickly about Thursday night football for those watching along live. Most of you will hear this, maybe during the game. The large portion of you probably after. You and I chatted about this afternoon. We both like the Cowboys. It might be a square pick at this point. 4 weeks in a row, they're big favorites. Didn't quite get to double digits. You'll see some 9s and 9.5s out there. I can't really get there with Seattle right now. They're not as bad as most of the teams that Dallas has beat up on at home. 205-60 is their margin of victory in their 5 home games so far this season. The Giants are in there, the Rams are in there. Some other bad teams. Obviously, the Commanders last week. I don't think Seattle's in that bucket, but without Kenneth Walker, with Geno Smith still banged up, an offense that just can't really get off the ground the last couple of weeks, I think we get another Dallas rout, man.
It's what they do. It's their calling card. Like if you have significant weaknesses, they're going to exploit them. I think that the Seahawks are not going to be able to generate much in the way of offense whatsoever. Again, with Kenneth Walker being sidelined, we expect. Geno has turned back into a pumpkin, sadly, and with how opportunistic this Dallas secondary is, I wouldn't hate the idea of throwing down on the Cowboys defense, scoring a touchdown on Thursday night. I think, yes, square in all likelihood, but at the same time, I think the square is sharp. I think that
square's got four corners, baby.
Yeah, it does, and they're all 90 degrees. That's pointy. So, give me the Cowboys to kind of run Seattle out of the gym.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I don't think it's going to be like a 49-10 situation. We've seen some just monster blowouts. I think Seattle can hang around more than that, but Dallas,
I'm not sure that they looked uncompetitive against the 49ers, and
I think the 49ers are another level up, though, man. I mean,
they are.
Seattle did look uncompetitive. I'm not fighting you on that. I mean, what did they run, like 18 plays in the first half?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was embarrassing. My mom was like, I was watching it with her on Thanksgiving. She's like, "What's their deal? Why are they so bad?"
See, I watch these games with my now wife, which I'm still like integrating that into my vocabulary. And she goes the other way. And she's just like, I feel so bad. Like, why can't they just let them score? This is so mean. I'm like, no, we're not playing this game. Run it up. I don't care.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get to the main slate. We'll start with the early games on Sunday. We'll get into the late window, and then, of course, hit Chiefs-Packers and Bengals-Jags. I got some stats to throw at you as far as when the last time the Jacksonville Jaguars played on Monday Night Football. But we'll get to that later. We'll talk through some games that we may use for our Circa Million entry. We missed the deadline, John, to get those in for the Thursday night game. I'm okay with that. As much as I like the Cowboys, I want to get some more information. I want to see where some things move over the next couple of days. We got some injuries that we'll discuss as well. But we'll talk about some games that will not be on the card. We'll talk about which games we're considering coming off of a 3-2 week in Circa. We're on a nice little run of late. I think we've had 4 or 5 positive weeks in a row, 13-6-1. Over the last 4 weeks for us in the Circa contest. We are 4 games above 500 on the year with 4 pushes, which every single one of those, John, it felt like they've just been like daggers in us.
Oh my God. I know. I'm trying to think of the most recent push. Was it the Chargers like 2 weeks ago?
Something like that. Yeah.
I
don't know. Every push has been a brutal push. There's not been one that it's always been a push that's like gone. We were in position to win it, and then it turns into a push as opposed to a loss to a push. But regardless, everybody's got their sob stories in the Circa contest. We're happy with where we are right now. Lost on maybe our worst pick of the year, Arizona, to beat the Rams. Although we did take the Rams against the Cowboys a few weeks back.
Yep.
And that was another bad one.
I pushed hard for that one. So hand up twice.
Look, when you have a dream, when you have a premonition, you got to follow it. I thought Arizona actually came out pretty strong early on. I thought we were going to be maybe on the right side of that one. We were not. We'll talk more about the Cardinals in a bit. Lost on Houston as well. I still like that pick. I think Houston wins that game in overtime if they can just get the 59-yarder, like 2 more inches. I think probably bounces forward instead of like 40 yards backwards off the crossbar. And then our 3 wins were pretty nice though. San Francisco didn't have to sweat that. Baltimore a little bit, but ultimately a game that they controlled. And then Pittsburgh just steamrolling the Cincinnati Bengals 16-10. Anyway, let's get to week 13. And we start, John, right with the best game of the week, the Chargers and the Patriots. Right now, the Chargers are 5.5-point favorites at DraftKings on the road at New England. This one locked at 5 in Circa. I got to say, I didn't give a whole lot of thought to this one for the Circa contest. You could maybe talk me into the LA side of things. I can't get there right now with the Patriots whatsoever. But it would also be, very Patriots-like to just kind of randomly show up here and keep this one within a field goal, because the Chargers, man, I know the defense actually looked pretty good. That was really surprising to me against the Ravens, how well that defense held up, because it's been extremely hit or miss and mostly miss this season, especially with no Joey Bosa. Right. But the offense, to me, man, I mean, it's literally falling apart. Austin Eckler has been terrible. He looks slow. Quentin Johnston, just a complete non-factor. We saw a lot of Alex Erickson down the stretch in that Baltimore game.
You probably liked, but
I mean, I respect him as a Badger, but my God, I didn't even know he was in the league. I got to be honest. I didn't know he was in the NFL.
That was unbelievable. So yeah, to your point here, that this is a game that nobody could love. I mean, if not for gambling, that no one would be interested in this game. I simply can't back the Patriots with any confidence, but I also can't really back the Chargers with any confidence. And they have the long trip, a relative rest disadvantage, having played last Sunday night. If I had to choose, I would pick the Chargers here, but I mean, it's nothing pointing in their favor so much as just the Patriots being that bad.
Yeah, this is a pretty clear stay away for me. We were talking about this game on the radio last night on XM with our pal Scott Pianowski from Yahoo, and he dropped a great line, just a great like veteran football mind line. We were talking about the Carolina game, and he was saying, he's like, I asked him, like, why do you like Carolina plus 5.5? He's like, look, sometimes you got to dance with an ugly date.
Yeah. Respect to Piano. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that is exactly how I would describe either side of this game if you're using it in any contest or betting it. So we'll move on. That's going to be a stay away for us. Although I will say I like the under on Austin Eckler's rushing prop this week. It's up at 53.5. Like I said, he's looked slow. He's putting the ball on the ground. The Chargers can't block whatsoever. On top of all this, he's gone under that total in 5 of his last 7 games. And the one thing New England can do is stop the run. I mean, they are number 1 in rush defense EPA on the year. And that's in a lot of situations where teams are, trying to run the ball on them in the second half. So maybe some obvious run situations there, but I don't like the spot for Austin Eckler. Take the under on 53.5 rushing yards. Let's move on to Lions-Saints. Somewhat of a fun game. Could be a fun game. Likely won't be, but there's a chance it's fun. So it's in New Orleans. Lions are 4-point favorites. You'll see some 4.5s out there as well. That's where it's at in circa total, all the way up at 47. Feels kind of high for a Saints game.
It does, but maybe that goes to suggest that the Lions are going to be able to score, and maybe the Lions defense lets down like it has over the last couple of weeks. I read an interesting stat from Casey Joyner, a kind of famous veteran NFL betting writer, and he noted that the Lions are 7-0 when they've allowed fewer than 26 points this season. That's all well and good, but New Orleans is not living in that kind of scoring territory, right? They've only done it twice, and it was against New England again in one of like the stranger games of the entire season, and then a bit of a shootout against Indianapolis. I don't know if that necessarily means that the Lions cover because they're going to be able to hold New Orleans under that 26 figure. 4.5 is kind of a tricky number to be dealing with here. And frankly, I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit of recency bias, but the last couple of weeks on the Lions have been pretty shaky. I mean, their performance against the Bears was not inspiring. Obviously got beat up pretty good by the Packers at home on Thanksgiving as well. Do they take the show on the road and get it done? They are 4-1 against the spread on the road in New Orleans is crazy enough. The Dome used to mean something, but they are 0-4 against the spread at home. If I had to do it, I would probably take Detroit, but I have enough negative thoughts about them to where I'm not interested in including them on the card.
Yeah, me neither. I would lead Detroit as well. It does feel like, they've gotten off to such bad starts the last 2 weeks. I think they do remedy that. Turnovers have obviously been an issue. Goff losing 3 fumbles last week. It's like that is who Jared Goff is, but it's also a fluky stat and something that doesn't really translate week to week. And I think they clean that up. There are some big injuries on the New Orleans side too. I mean, Chris Olave has been limited. We don't know if he's going to play. Same with Rashid Shaheed. He did not practice today. Obviously, Michael Thomas is on IR. Even Blake Grupe might not play. He's dealing with a groin injury, presumably from taking 6 kick attempts last week against the Atlanta Falcons. I think he's just dealing with like a fatigued leg. So if Blake Grupe's not available, I mean, that could change everything for the New Orleans offense. But yeah, this one is tough. I mean, I was doing some research, when I was writing up the games this week, and obviously Detroit's defense has been a huge issue. On top of the turnovers, allowed over 500 yards to Baltimore, over 420 to the Chargers, 334 to Chicago, which is the equivalent of like 600 for the Bears, and almost 400 to Green Bay last week. And that was with some short fields for the Packers. Since week 7, per Nate Tice of The Athletic, the Lions are 31st in defensive success rate, dead last in defensive EPA per play. They have a QB average time to throw over 3 seconds. That seems short, but that's pretty long.
Where's the pass rush? Insane.
Yeah, right. Exactly. 18.8% explosive pass rate allowed, which is like basically what the Dolphins do, as Nate Tice notes here in his tweet. So some concerning trends on that defense, but I don't think Derek Carr and the banged up Saints, who might be without 2 or all 3 of their top receivers, really take advantage of it. So my lean there would be on Detroit as well. Falcons-Jets. Let's see if we could do this one in like 40 seconds, John. Falcons are 2-point favorites on the road. Our total is down at 34. This is a battle between two entities that I do not trust whatsoever.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, though, the Jets have, just an abhorrent offense. It's so bad. And I think that the Jets defense, for one reason or another, I think they might be a little bit overrated, just a little bit. And maybe it's because they're just dejected from what the offense gives them, which is nothing. And after 3 months into a season, it's like we're tired of giving 100 for this. But either way, I think the Falcons win and win ugly. I think it's a rather friendly number if you're backing the Falcons here with that number just being at just 2 points. So I will take the Falcons as road favorites in this one because I don't think Tim Boyle can do anything.
I don't think so either. And the Jets have posted 155 and 159 yards of total offense over the last 2 games. That's not going to get it done against teams like Buffalo and Miami. Probably not even going to get it done against Atlanta. I think, obviously the Falcons we know are going to find a way to make this ugly. I would actually lean under even on such a low number at 34. I mean, this to me is like a 17 to 9 game in favor of Atlanta, which, it's been a pretty decent defense, an improved Falcons defense. They get takeaways. We saw a couple of those in the red zone last week against New Orleans. So, Atlanta, you never want to trust them. It's not like Desmond Ridder is all that much better than Tim Boyle in my mind, but I think they can ride the running game here and just kind of eke out a pretty gross victory. Cardinals-Steelers. Fun game to discuss, John. We got a rematch of what was that, like the 2009 Super Bowl, something like that, the Larry Fitzgerald Super Bowl. Steelers
08 season, 09 calendar year.
Yes,
correct.
Of course. Yeah, I remember the split Madden cover. I think it was Palomalu and Fitzgerald. Steelers 5.5-point favorites at home. Total is 41.5. I did a video that we do each week, for Circa, talking about our picks for the contest. Had our guy Brandon Kravitz on to kind of debate me on some of these. First one I pitched was like, I love Pittsburgh -5.5. And he was like, absolutely not. I love the Cardinals +5.5. So you're going to be the tiebreaker on this one.
Well, I'm siding with Yins here. I like the Steelers. See, I use a little Pittsburgh parlance.
Really good stuff there.
Thank you. No, I think that the Cardinals are in deep trouble in this spot. I think that their defense versus this run game for Pittsburgh is going to be an issue. You don't have to necessarily even believe that the Steelers offense has turned over this new leaf since firing Matt Canada to expect that they're going to be able to move the ball with ease on the Cardinals, and it's going to be at home. I think it's interesting. Sometimes looking at props can kind of give you an idea of where Vegas kind of expects certain players' performances to end up. And Kyler Murray's passing yardage prop, last time I checked, was 212. Wouldn't that seem low? Wouldn't that seem like a slam dunk to take the over on that? It's like, well, I don't think they're handing out slam dunks like that. So there has to be a reason. No, that's why the casinos are so large and opulent. So I think that we're going to see Kyler struggle. He only threw for 214 in his other road start this year. That was against the Texans, who I don't believe have as good of a defense as the Steelers.
They don't.
This is just a bad setup for Arizona. I think Arizona is pretty fun generally. I do enjoy watching them, but that doesn't mean that they're competitive or even plucky anymore. So I think that the Steelers get this one done, and they keep getting away with it. They're not good, but their record is going to imply that they're insane.
Yeah, this one to me is all about the Arizona defense, and I think you said it. Like, I'm not. I don't want to be like the Steelers offense is back guy, which, by the way, I do think they have like better pieces than the Matt Canada offense showed. So like I do think the post Canada bounce could be real, but that's not my handicap here by any means. It's about the Arizona defense. They're dead last in pressure rate. They're dead last in opponents' first downs given up. They're 31st in EPA per play on defense. They're dead last in opponents' success rate. I mean, this is a game where you're not asking Kenny Pickett to go out and throw for 350 yards. You're asking Najee Harris and Jalen Warren to combine for over 200 yards on the ground, which the Rams did with ease last week against Arizona. And Matthew Stafford also threw 4 touchdowns in that game, right? I mean, it's a defense that hemorrhages yards. They hemorrhage points. I know Pittsburgh has been pretty bad in the red zone. They were 1 of 4, 1 of 5 last week. That's going to continue, I think, to be an Achilles heel. But I really like the spot for Pittsburgh. I love Najee Harris over 55.5 rushing yards as well. Steelers 3-1 against the number as a favorite this season. We always think of them as a team that you want to take as a dog, the Mike Tomlin narrative. But I think this is a team that, we can quibble about the Matt Canada thing, but it's different than firing a head coach. I also think you get some of the Josh McDaniels bump here, because I think all the players, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Najee Harris, all those guys wanted Matt Canada gone, right? And
right.
I think they're all Mike Tomlin guys. They don't want him gone. But there's going to be a boost internally for this team. They should have scored more points. If you look at the per drive numbers, the total yardage, it implies that you score a lot more than 16 points last week against Cincinnati. And look, the Bengals are a bad defense as well. There might not even be that big of a gap between the Bengals and the Cardinals defense at this point. But at worst, I see Pittsburgh kind of repeating what it did last week. And if they win this game 16-10, then so be it. We win the bet.
There it is. Well said. Landed it. Let's move on.
Let's move on to Colts-Titans. AFC South battle. Titans really, this might be the last stand for them if they have any hope whatsoever to make the playoffs. I don't think they do. But this would pretty much be it from a math perspective if they lose this one. They are 1 point home dogs to the Gardner Minshew-led Indianapolis Colts. Our total 42.5. I do give slight lean to the Colts here, but this is one that I didn't really put a whole lot of consideration into for the circuit contest.
So Indianapolis and the Rams kind of fall in that same bucket to me, where like they're alive in the playoff hunt, but I have no idea if they're actually good or not. I'm less sure of the Rams than I am of Indianapolis, but Indianapolis definitely still has some pretty fatal flaws. But at the same time, you look at the AFC playoff picture, the Bills have kind of put themselves behind the 8 ball. Teams like the Jets are falling by the wayside, the Bengals with no Joe Burrow. So I think for one reason or another, like Indianapolis could definitely find their way into the playoffs somehow. But, what does it mean for this game? Well, they have been road warriors this year. They're 4-1 against the spread on the road. Tennessee has been great at home against the spread, so something's got to give there. They're 4-1. They're terrible on the road against the spread. So, but we'll be able to play around with that a little bit later in the season. But what do those trends mean exactly for this game? I do find some concern that the Titans are a bit of a pass funnel defense. They can stop the run a little bit. I would still start Zach Moss for fantasy purposes, but I think this sets up pretty well for that Indianapolis passing game. And if they get in rhythm there, I don't think Tennessee can really keep up in any sort of offensive back and forth type of game. So my lean is Indianapolis, but at one point, that's it's not the strongest, and the public isn't sure what to do on this one either. Like 56% of the money is coming in on Indianapolis. So where are you with this one?
Yeah, I lean Indy just because I think they can score. And, Tennessee, when they win games, they got to hold the opponent basically under 20 points, right? They've scored more than 20 points exactly 3 times this season. They've won all 3 of those games. But more often than not, they're somewhere in the 14 to 17 range, right? I mean, the last 4 games, 16, 6, 14, 17. And really all Indy does is get to 20 points. They might lose the game. They might find themselves in a shootout and lose 34-31. But I don't think Tennessee is really capable of keeping up in that scenario. I mean, Indy scored 20 plus in every game except for that just ungodly disaster win over New England overseas a few weeks ago. I mean, I think if the Colts get to even 23 points in this game, to me, there's only a 20% chance that Tennessee can outscore them, right? So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, these teams have already played earlier this season in week 5. That was a 23-16 win for the Colts. And frankly, I think that's kind of what I see happening here again. And we saw the Colts rush for 193 yards as a team in that game. They won't have Jonathan Taylor. Does that really matter to you?
No. Zach Moss has played well enough this year that I don't think from a spread perspective that there's enough of a drop off that I'm really concerned about Indianapolis. The wild card is, what if Will Levis shows up and really, is able to match pace and kind of break the narratives that we've expected. But, they're mounting evidence to the contrary on that. So I think I'll side with the team with the more functional offense and a defense that isn't great, but I think it's solid enough in both facets, whereas I think Tennessee is kind of a glaring holes all across the secondary. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Tennessee got out to an early lead last week against a terrible Carolina team. One of those scores came after a turnover, short field. They scored immediately. They tacked on a field goal later. 5 of their last 6 drives were punts. It's just not a consistent offense right now. And, the Colts can be scored on. I just don't really think Tennessee more often than not, I don't think they're going to keep up with Indy. So that would be my lean. Take the Colts -1 on the road. All right, let's quick message from our friends at Circa Resort and Casino, presenting sponsor of this pod. They, of course, put on the Circa Million contest, Circa Survivor. It's football season at Circa Resort and Casino in Vegas, featuring the best pool in history, Stadium Swim. 3 levels, 6 pools, a 143-foot diagonal screen. Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. They play every game. This would be just the weekend of all weekends to be at Circa on Saturday for college football, NFL on Sunday. You can catch all the action poolside. They got a variety of seating options, day beds, cabanas. You could just sit in the hot tub, chill in the pool. We've done it all over at Circa Stadium Swim. It's located at Circa Resort and Casino, and it's open 365 days a year, all sports, all seasons. Book today at circalasvegas.com. That is Circa, CIRCA, lasvegas.com. All right, fun game. Could be a fun game, I should say, out in Washington. We should at least have some points for one team here. The Miami Dolphins are 9.5-point favorites on the road. This total was actually sitting up north of 40, north of 50, which has been a rarity this season, but it's down to 49.5 now. Tough game, tough number. Miami, obviously a different team when they go on the road, especially this time of year. You have some concern. Washington is one of those teams that any given week could show up. They haven't the last 3 weeks. They're coming off of a shellacking at the hands of the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Slight rest advantage, you could say, for Washington, having played a day earlier, but Miami played Friday. Not really a whole lot to say there. I like the Dolphins here. It's hard to put any faith right now in Washington, and look, maybe they get the post Del Rio bounce here, but I don't think you want to be firing your defensive coordinator before playing the Dolphins of all teams.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said for that. And Washington is in a free fall, of course, but 9.5 points at home. I don't know, I don't want to trust Washington with that enough to put it on the card, but they are 5-2-1 against the spread as underdogs this year. That gives me a little bit of pause. They're at home. I don't know if it's going to be chilly enough to affect this Miami team in any way, but I think Miami wins, but I think that in my heart of hearts, maybe it's just by a touchdown.
Yeah, Miami's had some kind of strange games, throughout the year. Obviously, some of those have come against elite opponents, but you think back to the Raiders game a couple of weeks ago, and it wouldn't be shocking if this one played out like that, or even if Sam Howell, got it together. And, as we saw during the middle portion of the season and even early on, they were routinely getting into the high 20s, into the 30s. This could be a shootout type of game. It feels like Washington might be due for that. But for me, this comes down to the Washington defense. It's bad, man. They allowed almost 500 yards to Seattle. Seattle can't move the ball on anybody right now. And they allowed 489 yards. They lost to the Giants by 2 scores. They're losing the turnover battle 8-0 over the last 3 weeks. Obviously 6 of those came against the Giants and somewhat of an outlier, but I think the bigger point is that the defense is not forcing turnovers. So you worry about the conditions, you worry about the December game for Miami on the road. I totally get all that. If this game was in Miami, I would take it up to 13.5 for the Dolphins.
Sure. No, absolutely. But it in this instance, I don't know. I have a strange feeling in my gut about Washington being able to keep pace offensively. But yes, Miami is absolutely going to be able to get whatever they want on offense. So maybe if anything, I like the over in this game, even though it's 49.5. I could definitely see that, going over. But if I had to pick it, I like the Commanders to cover. Feels bad, feels terrible, which means it's a good bet.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes you got to dance with an ugly date, John. That's what it comes down to.
Hey.
Broncos-Texans. Sneaky fun game in the AFC. Not a game that I would have had circled even 3 weeks ago. Certainly not coming into the season. Texans 3.5-point favorites at home. Total up at 47.5. This is another one that Brandon Kravitz and I went head to head on. He was feeling the Broncos. I've seen plenty of people. I think a lot of it is the number, right? You're getting 3.5. Broncos have won 5 straight. They got this defense turned around. I lean Texans here, though. As long as the Texans are healthy, the Tank Dell's been banged up this week. Obviously, the offensive line has just been a catastrophe of injuries this entire season. Dalton Schultz, I think, might not play in this game. He did not practice at all today. So that worries me a little bit for Houston. But if this is a game that is played in the mid to high 20s or even the 30s, I don't see how Denver really keeps up. Houston is the team to me that they could have a bad start. They could go down I don't know, 14-3 early on, and you just always feel like they're going to have a chance to rally back. Like they have hit more big plays through the air than any team this season, and that checks out, right? I mean, that completely checks out if you've watched them throughout this year. I mean, they have hit more passes of 25 plus yards than anybody. You could argue that maybe that's not something that you can bank on week to week, but I could tell you, as somebody who's supporting the team playing against them last week, they are a terrifying opponent.
No, exactly. Like, that you look back to the last month, like the Buccaneers game, the Bengals game last week, coming in within inches of pulling off the win against the Jaguars. Like they're just never dead. You cannot kill them. So that's scary, of course. But I think to your point, that this game, and maybe this seems like general analysis, but I think it really does apply here. Like whoever dictates the tempo is going to get the win here, because the Broncos want to play an ugly game. They want to be the boa constrictor. They want to just kind of like slow and steady squeeze you, choke you up, and get out of there with an ugly close win. 3.5 points. Like I think the Denver can hang in there, but they absolutely have to play their game. They have to keep a lid on that CJ Stroud led offense, because I mean you could easily see this going the other way. The Broncos defense regresses all of a sudden, and Houston's absolutely running away with this one. So Denver wins, it's going to be close. If Houston wins, it's probably going to be a blowout. My lean with how these two teams have been playing, and I love Houston. I was all over their win total coming into the season. I'm happy to say that it's already cashed easily.
Yep.
I want the Broncos plus 3.5. I do.
Ooh, okay. So I like Houston here, and part of it is, Denver, they've had this incredible turnaround on defense. It goes without saying, they were the worst defense in the NFL through the first 6 weeks of the season. Since then, they are 7th in EPA per play. And it's noticeable, right? You watch games, they don't look like the team that allowed 70 to the Miami Dolphins and allowed, 35 to the Commanders, and, looked terrible against the Bears and the Jets. I mean, they were a 1-5 team not long ago. And all of a sudden now they're 6-5. Over the last 4 games specifically, John, they have forced 15 turnovers. 15, and they've committed only 3. Now, I think the Broncos not committing turnovers, I think that is sustainable because of the way they play, right? This is an intentional method, I think, for the Broncos offense. You're limiting Russell Wilson. You're running a bunch of screens, a lot of short passes, a lot of just straight up run plays. And I think you can move the ball on the ground on Houston. So there is an argument here that Denver is the team that may be able to dictate pace. But man, if you take turnovers out of the equation, this defense does not quite measure up to that 7th in EPA per play, right? And I just think at some point, I mean, you got 4 straight games where you forced at least 3 turnovers, and you've won the turnover battle by at least 2. Like that's got to come around at some point.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, turnovers are not sticky week to week, and certainly over the course of a season. Like really, the only team that comes to mind that was a great team that is kind of able to sustain kind of unbelievable turnover luck was the Saints team that won the Super Bowl all those years ago. So that's definitely a big concern when it comes to banking on this alleged turnaround for the Broncos. But I don't know. I think maybe in this case they don't even need to be like +2 in the turnover margin to win. As long as they can just play sound and solid on the defensive side of the ball and keep a lid on that Texans offense, I think they should be able to keep it close enough.
Okay. Panthers-Buccaneers in the NFC South. Tampa Bay, a 5-point favorite at home. Had some 5.5s, even some 6s earlier this week. This one's come down a little bit. Low total at 37. Sometimes I would imply just, if you got a low scoring game, maybe take the team that's getting 5 points. I don't know if I can get there with Carolina, man. I don't know if there's a post-firing bounce coming for a team that I think actually liked its coach. Maybe you could argue that Frank Reich isn't a good coach, whatever. I'll hear that argument. I don't think he's a dislikable guy. I don't think this is a Josh McDaniels situation at all. If anything, I think Carolina, if you're a player on this team, you're probably just like embarrassed to even be a part of this organization at this point. I don't think you're rallying around the firing of Frank Reich. Over the last 20 years, for what it's worth, teams in their first game after firing a coach midseason, 17-19 straight up, 20-16 against the number. So, it's a trend that would maybe push you slightly in favor of Carolina. There's something about watching the Panthers where they're obviously a bad team. They're the worst team in the NFL. They're not comically bad. They don't make like the laughable plays. You don't have a 99-yard pick 6 before halftime. It's like they're not the Jets, but they're just boring. They don't do anything.
Yeah, they're bum you out.
They're totally content to go 3 and out 7 times a game. They have fewer big plays through the air this season than the New England Patriots do. Think about that. Like, can you even picture a 25+ yard pass play for the Patriots? I don't know when those have happened. The Panthers have less on the year than the Patriots do. They've failed to score 20 points now in 5 straight games. They haven't topped 300 yards of offense in 6 straight games. The other side of this is you're taking Baker Mayfield as a favorite, and he has a terrible record as a favorite throughout his career. So I'm not saying I feel great about this, but I can't get there with Carolina.
Exactly. Carolina's just that bad, and but not needing a full touchdown to get this cover. Like, Tampa Bay can easily win this game 20-14, and we're fine. So I think it's going to be something along those lines. Tampa Bay hung in there against Indianapolis on the road last week, had the killer turnover there at the end to kind of swing things the wrong way, but they usually tend to like hang around in games where they're dogs. And I know as favorites, Baker Mayfield has a not so sparkling track record, but I think bottom line here, to your point that you opened up with, like, the Panthers are just that bad, and 5 points, I'm willing to take the risk there.
Yeah, I think if this was at 6, I would back away. But I think getting it under those key numbers is big here. So we like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home against the Carolina Panthers to win what will, in all likelihood, be a frustrating and ugly game. What will not be a frustrating and ugly game, John, is the 49ers-Eagles showdown that we get in Philly as part of the late window on Sunday. Eagles have played a gauntlet of a schedule. I think they took a lot of heat for an easy schedule last year. Keep in mind that NFL teams don't pick their opponents. This is all like rotation and record based. But here we are now. The schedule's picking up. Obviously, they're coming off of big wins over KC and Buffalo. It's not going to get any easier. They are 3-point home dogs to the 49ers.
I know that some people were surprised to see that. That's fair. The Eagles are 10-1. And, obviously one of the best teams in football, not just the NFC. I think the 49ers are the best team in football, though, period. Yep. And I don't think that they mind going on the road here. I think that the Eagles have had to play an absolute gauntlet lately. I mean, the Chiefs game, the Bills game, even before that, a tough one against Dallas prior to their bye. And they've kind of had to squeak out all of them. And I think a game where they lose rather handily is not far off. And I think that the way that the 49ers are playing lately, they're the team to do it. I think that everything's clicking on that offense. I think, Purdy's been pretty much mistake-free since the bye, and I think that ties in nicely with their record since the bye. Obviously, they had lost the 3 games going into it, and Purdy was turning the ball over left and right, and that was a big issue for them. So he will need to be disciplined in that regard. McCaffrey's playing on just like a completely ridiculous level right now for his own part, and I feel like Brandon Ayuk is coming on strong. There's just too many weapons for the 49ers on offense, and I think this Philly secondary is kind of beatable, frankly. And I think on the other side, I think that this is a 49ers defense that probably welcomes the physical nature of the Eagles offense in its own right. I think Philly's gotten by on bullying people. I don't think San Francisco gets bullied in this spot. Give me the Niners, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but I think I like them. The number doesn't have to just be 3 for me to like the 49ers.
Yeah, sitting at 3 is tough. I would have loved to have gotten this in circa at 2.5, which would have been massive. I don't mind it at 3, right? Especially if we're passing on Dallas tonight. It's going to be tough to find a 5th game that you like, but yeah, I'm kind of split on Philly because they probably should have lost 1 or 2 more games along the way. And yeah, maybe they should have won the Jets game back in week 6, but the defense has shown some pretty concerning cracks. And we knew it was going to be an issue coming into the year. Mostly the secondary was the problem, but lately they've done nothing but win, but they've hemorrhaged yards to Washington. They hemorrhaged yards to Dallas. Even Kansas City ran for almost 170 on them. They gave up over 500 yards of offense to the Bills in an overtime game last week. And I just don't think you can keep skating by. Like, San Francisco is not the team that if they get to 450 yards of offense in this game, they're not losing. They're not losing.
No.
That's what Buffalo does. That's not what San Francisco does. There's also some pretty key injuries on the Philly side that we have to monitor. AJ Brown limited at practice all week. I think he's going to play, but might not be 100%. Much more concerning to me is, Fletcher Cox. He hasn't been ruled out, but there's been some whispers that he's probably not going to play. Jordan Davis, went out last week late against Buffalo. He might not be available either. I mean, if one or both of those guys are out, I think that is potential disaster for Philly. So, the question is, if you like San Francisco, do you think more often than not they win this game by more than 3? Like, do they do it pretty convincingly?
I really do. I'm pretty strong on this one. I'm kind of putting my San Francisco take on the table. It's not really a slight at Philly whatsoever, but I just think San Francisco, they are those guys this year.
Okay. All right. I'm fine with that one. We will set that aside for a potential Circa contest play, even at 3. We're dancing with the devil on that one. Browns-Rams. Rams 3.5-point favorites at home. Our total is 40. This to me might be the single most difficult game to attempt to evaluate right now. Partially because we have no idea what's going on at quarterback for the Browns. They have injuries. Amari Cooper was banged up last week. Myles Garrett was banged up. There's a few other, key injuries on the defensive side. They got a couple guys in that secondary, including Denzel Ward, who've been held out of practice this week. At the same time, I'm still not quite buying it with the Rams. Like, I think they're back to a point where they could beat the bad teams, as we saw last week. And obviously getting Kyren Williams back, getting the running game going is going to be big. But going from facing the Cardinals to facing the Browns defense is about as big of a leap as it gets.
Yeah, that's a huge whiplash. And there's no real home field advantage there at SoFi Stadium for the Rams. So I think that the Browns just go in there and ugly this one up and escape either with a win straight up or a cover. I think that we're going to see some turnovers from Matthew Stafford. I think that the Browns defense is the thing that carries the day in this one. And if the Browns have to turn to Joe Flacco, as Benson's alluding to in the chat, I'm all for it. I want to see old Joe do well to a point. But January we'll see. But for now, against the Rams, when no one expects anything from him, it would be very funny to see Joe Flacco go out there and get a win. But no, I just think that the Rams, they're not built to beat a great defense like this. And I think the Browns still have it. I would like it better if Myles Garrett didn't get dinged up a little bit last week, but assuming that he's out there and available, this is a winnable game for the Browns, who that they know that they're going to have to win this way to keep their playoff spot. And this is one of the games left on their schedule that they probably should have circled as a win. So the fact they're even going in there as 3.5-point underdogs probably doesn't feel great for them. I think they go in there and get this done, actually, and 3.5 friendly number in their favor.
I don't know if the Browns win the game outright, but I like them at 3.5. I like the under on 40 the most in this game.
Yep.
I always think this is a good way to look at it, when you're talking about a quarterback or certain key players. If you are a Rams fan, who do you want starting for the Browns?
You want DTR probably.
I think so, right? There's the unknown with Flacco. There's at least
he threw for 300 yards last year a couple times.
Yeah,
he's not done yet,
so, man. Yeah, especially if Amari Cooper plays, I think you want Joe Flacco. Yeah, we'll see, man. We have no indication, as of Thursday evening, but I would guess. I mean, DTR got knocked out pretty good, man. I mean, that was a monster hit. Still in protocols as of Thursday evening. I think we might see Joe Flacco. All right, we've got 2 more games, Sunday and Monday night. Chiefs-Packers. You'll see some 5.5s out there. You'll see some 6s as well. This one locked at 5.5 in Circa. It's at 6 at the DK Sportsbook. Our total is 42.5. Chiefs, of course, favored on the road. Seeing a lot of love for Green Bay. Not only covering this number, but I've even heard some people say they think Green Bay can win this game outright at home. I don't know if I quite go that far.
Well, I mean, you live in a part of the country where you're probably more attuned to hear those type of takes, but
I might be.
I've kind of been espousing that myself, though. Not necessarily the win, but the Packers actually playing them close. If you saw this on the Sunday Night Football schedule a few weeks back, you're like, dear God, what are they doing to us? This better get flexed out. Now, not so much. I mean, did the Chiefs really figure out their second half scoring issues last week by actually scoring against the Raiders? I'm not sure about that. And I think that the Packers defense, it's been playing better lately, and Jordan Love has been playing better for his part as well. I mean, no turnovers in any of their last 3 wins. Those have come in the last 4 weeks. I think he's looked good. I think that this young receiving core of kind of no names, I like those guys. Like, I like Jaden Reed. I like Dontavian Wicks. Like Christian Watson, and neither here nor there. But I don't know. I like this group. I am concerned that they're not going to be able to be balanced, and being one-dimensional against Steve Spagnuolo sounds pretty bad to me, because I think the Chiefs have really kind of gotten by with their defense for the most part this season. So there's some concern there. But is it still at 6 at circa?
5.5.
5.5? Oof. You know what? I still like the Packers.
Okay. Yeah, I like KC in this one. I think this is the come back down to earth game for Green Bay, and not to take anything away from Love. Like, I don't think he comes out and just looks terrible. Like, I think he's made real progress and is picking up confidence, and certainly getting Christian Watson involved last week is the piece that Green Bay's kind of been missing in terms of big plays in this offense. I think Green Bay can compete. I wouldn't be surprised if they cover. I would be pretty surprised if they win this game. Sure. Just beating Mahomes and Andy Reid in any situation. Like, Green Bay, they're still like the youngest team in the NFL, man. Like, I don't think they expect to win this game. And I think Kansas City defensively is still something that we're underrating with how good this defense has been. Like, Green Bay, yeah, you beat the Lions. I mean, they've been the worst defense in football over the last 4 weeks. You beat the LA Chargers. That's a Jekyll and Hyde team. And, I don't, which is like the bad side of Jekyll and Hyde? Jekyll?
Isn't it Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
Yeah, which is the bad one though. Dr. Jekyll, I assume.
But like, can you turn into a doctor as your evil, alter ego? I think. Does your evil alter ego go to night med school? I forget.
Yeah, I don't know. What I was going to say is, they've been mostly the bad side of that, which is just, I guess, too dated of an analogy for us at this point. But also lost in that win to Detroit, or that win over Detroit last week, is that they gave up a ton of yards to the Lions. The Lions just couldn't finish drives. They made some bizarre decisions, like went for some weird fourth downs. Obviously had the fumble 6 that put Green Bay up by multiple scores early on, and they were kind of able to just run it out from there. Jared Goff, 3 turnovers. He's turned the ball over a ton over the last couple of weeks. On one hand, that is who Jared Goff is. We've seen that in the past. On the other, it's like, what are the chances that happens again with Patrick Mahomes? Probably not. I think Green Bay has really benefited from some huge turnovers, some huge drops over the last couple of weeks. And they still, the defense has improved. They should be healthier this week than they've been in weeks past. They're still a bad run defense, man. I mean, this is, we read that stat a couple weeks ago where they allowed like almost 4 yards before contact in that loss to the Steelers. And, it's not like the Chiefs are this dominant rushing offense, but I think if the passing game is faltering, like, they could fall back on Pacheco here and at the very least, win this game by a field goal.
Mr. Hyde, also the evil one.
He's the evil one. Okay.
We've come with getting reports from my correspondents in the chat, but no, those are all great points. I would say that maybe I'm a little bit swept up in what I've seen from the Packers of late, and a little bit just kind of not overly impressed by the Chiefs over the larger portion of this season. I think they still have some problems as far as their pass catchers are concerned. If Kelsey's not Superman, are they getting Rashee Rice enough? Is Rashee Rice the guy that needs to be getting like that much work? Like, should he be getting that type of like target expectation on a given week? Should he be expected to be the number 1 receiver for Patrick Mahomes? Like, that feels like the Chiefs have kind of screwed up that receiving core a little bit. Does it matter here? Maybe not, but I'll stick with the Packers here, but I certainly understand the Chiefs side of the equation, and I'll probably leave this one off the old card.
Well, we got some things to discuss off air. One game I will try to sell you on, John, is taking the Jacksonville Jaguars -8.5 on Monday Night Football. And this is an extra strong endorsement because I'm always trying to sell us on picking against the Jaguars. So it actually kind of scares me that I'm now in on them to win and cover this game. This is their first Monday night game, home or road, since 2011. That was a game that was started by Blaine Gabbert. Cecil Shorts played in that game, John. The following players were not even in the NFL yet. They were 1 or 2 years away from even being drafted. Travis Kelce, DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Le'Veon Bell, Zach Ertz, Luke Kuechly. None of these players were even in the NFL the last time the Jags played on Monday night. This crowd's going to be hyped up. They're going to be out for blood. They know the streak. It's been 12 years since they've had a Monday night game. And look, I wish Joe Burrow was playing in this game. It's good for the Jags that he's not. This would have been a really fun showdown. The Cincinnati would have really needed this game, to hang around in the AFC playoff race. I probably would have picked the Bengals in that situation. I'm very curious to see, how much do they open things up with Jake Browning. I thought they used it pretty conservatively, especially early on against Pittsburgh last week. To me, if you're Cincinnati, like, what do you have to lose? I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball again this week as they were unable last week. Jags run defense has been pretty good all season. Cincinnati, by the way, there's like a crazy trend in this spot. They are 1-25 straight up in road or neutral night games in the last 15 years. They've lost 16 straight in this spot. And maybe that doesn't help us with the 8.5, but I don't see Cincinnati winning this game more than anything. I'm putting the Jake Browning stuff aside. We're putting the Burrow injury aside. Over the last 5 games, the Bengals have allowed an average of 430 yards per game. As we know, 421 to the Steelers in week 12. They got Sam Hubbard back. Didn't really matter. I think this is a get Travis Etienne back on track game. He's gone 3 straight now where he's been pretty underwhelming. Jags 7-1 against the number in their last 8 games. Love Travis Etienne anytime TD. I think Evan Ingram could get his first touchdown. Like, this is one where I think the Jaguars offense, even if they commit their usual, like, backbreaking fumble, Lawrence throws a weird pick, I think they're going to be able to score on Cincinnati. And, even if they give the Bengals a short field or they give up a couple scores, like I think this could be like a 31-20 game for Jacksonville.
I don't even see how the Bengals get a couple scores here. I think that Jags defense is legit. The teal curtain is real, So I think that we have a situation where the Bengals are going to be one-dimensional. We saw what the Steelers did, just take away the run game completely last week. I don't think Joe Mixon is going to do much of anything in this spot. And then you're trusting Jake Browning to figure it out. And really, it's just not going to happen. Not in this spot, not in that raucous environment. And it seems like over the last 2 weeks, especially that the Jags have really started to figure some things out on offense. Maybe it took that butt whooping from San Francisco to kind of wake up and reassess some things. They've started getting Calvin Ridley the ball. That's been nice. There's been some encouraging developments. Trevor Lawrence has been using his legs more, so that seems to indicate that the knee issue that was bugging him going into that Saints Thursday night game, I think that's behind him at this point. I think he's an underrated athlete, frankly. So there's a lot going in the Jags' favor here. I'd be interested in alternate spread on them as well. I think that they kind of take the paint off the Bengals, who are, they're dead now. They don't have Joe Burrow. It's over.
Yeah, I don't like to get into the emotional, psychological side of games, but there is something, Cincinnati, even if Joe Burrow stayed healthy, I mean, they were facing an uphill climb to get to where they want to be in the AFC. And I think they would have gotten there, but it wasn't going to be easy. And, this team knows they're dead in the water, right? I think the performance that we saw last week against Pittsburgh kind of hammered that home. And, Jacksonville's a better team, a much better offense than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think, this could be an obvious letdown spot for the Jags. I get that. I don't think so, man. Like, Doug Peterson, he's kind of a momentum coach. Like when they're playing well, they tend to keep playing well, and I think this is one of those spots where they kind of sense blood here and have a big opportunity to take a commanding lead in that division and still hang in there. Like Jacksonville needs this for the 1 seed. I think I've been saying that all year. Like the Jags potentially getting the 1 seed, it matters more to them than it does Kansas City or even Miami or Baltimore in my mind. I think the Jags are a team talent-wise where they kind of are in their general franchise progression. Like getting that 1 seed would be massive. And I think that is,
you guys are road warriors though. You guys have been amazing on the
road.
Yeah,
well, I mean, they are. That's all well and good, but I don't want to go to Arrowhead for a
I wouldn't either.
Game. I don't want to go to Arrowhead for the AFC title game. Like you want those games at home if you could get them. And I think Jacksonville's keeping that in mind. So I like the Jags -8.5. It's a big number. It's weird to see the Jags as such big favorites, but I think they win this game by 2 scores. My parlay of the week, John, we're going with a simple money line parlay. We're taking Pittsburgh, we're taking San Francisco, and we're taking Tampa Bay. That gets you to +230 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Nothing fancy this week.
Okay, I'm down with that. I'm getting a little weirder with it. I'm doing an alternate spread for San Francisco. I'm taking them up to 6.5, -6.5. Yeah, that's on its own. It's +158. Then I like the Steelers -5.5. Then I like the Browns +3.5. That pays out 840.
Okay. All right. You said you're getting weird. You backed it up. I like it. Taking the alt spread on San Francisco. We are going with a 7-point teaser for the Nick Whalen's whale play teaser of the week. We are teasing the Miami Dolphins from, 9.5 down to 2.5. We're teasing Jacksonville down to 2. Just don't want to play with it. Both those teams getting them under a key number is big. And then we are teasing the Pittsburgh Steelers up to +1.5. Not something I feel great about there, but, just take the field goal out of the equation. They could even lose this game by 1. We still win our teaser. So Miami 2.5, Jacksonville 2, Pittsburgh 1.5. That is our 7-point teaser of the week. John, who are you going with for a best bet?
Give me the Niners. If I like them at 6.5, I certainly like them at 3. I just think the Niners are going to make a pretty loud statement on Sunday afternoon. And again, I don't think it says anything bad about the Eagles, but I don't know. We're going to hear some stuff about Philadelphia next week if it goes the way that I think it might.
Okay. All right. I'm surprised your best bet is not like alternate spread Niners minus 14.5.
Just going ballistic with it, just like Sting coming down from the rafters, or Ludacris, I guess, from last week's example.
Oh man, I love Ludacris. He was my guy, like in elementary and middle school. Like I was the biggest Ludacris fan in the state
Absolute
of Wisconsin,
king.
which is
Love that
it's
guy.
aged okay, right? I mean, now he's become this like world class like cyber hacker. Never really saw that coming at the time, but nice little career change for a guy Luda. I'm between the Jags and the Steelers as my best bet. I'm going with the Jags. You know, this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity for me to feel this strongly about Jacksonville. And I am very cognizant of having all my eggs in this basket. You know, normally I'd pull the classic emotional hedge here. We're taking the Jags. Like I said, I think they sense blood in the water with Cincinnati. I think this is going to be a wild crowd, man. You don't think of the Jags as having a great home field advantage. People are pumped for this game. Believe me, it's going to be awesome. And I think Jacksonville puts a big number on the board. So I'm taking the Jags minus 8.5. That'll do it. That'll do it for the Week 13 betting breakdown. You can find the archive version over on the RotoWire YouTube channel. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you get your pods. John, best of luck, man. Looking forward to officially locking in the Circa picks later this week. And best of luck to everybody listening and betting the NFL this week.